All right, y'all, we're rebooting this thing. This was the formerly Five O Fierce and Fit podcast. We are now rolling with the Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast, which is mirrored off of the book I just released in July. So, kind of along that same theme, I was just rolling with a teaser of what to expect. Um, Kind of three things that come to mind for me and that I want to interview my guests who I have on here with. One is that we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. The second is that now that I'm having a brain fart because I just tried to record this for TikTok and Instagram. Oh my goodness, real life. Number two, you're one decision away from a totally different life. And also
Yep.
squirrel mo moments are allowed. Um, you're one decision away from a totally different life. And then really, what does it look to you to thrive inside the thin blue line? Which to me really means just having like a happy, healthy life, not being chained to work or one thing or the other. And the thin blue line just symbolizes my journey, because I come from a law enforcement background. So it's really more geared towards female first responders, women in male-driven fields, anybody who winds up feeling like they're in a toxic work environment or something less than positive, and really just trying to find your way out of that. So, quick overview, but today we have Haley on, and I'll let you introduce yourself. So go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley. First of all, I just want to say thanks for having me, Monica. I love, obviously, your story and what you stand for and how you've taken everything in your life and built yourself up to be who you are now. Very inspiring to me. But I am going on 6.5 years in law enforcement. Seems like nothing in the scheme of life, but growing up, I was a cop's kid. My dad is still active in law enforcement today. I'm saying to retire, but he won't. So I feel like I've been in this world for a lot longer. And then also, 5 of my 6.5 years was in Chicago and probably like the number one, number two worst area inside the entire city. So it's kind of like dog years there. I've experienced a lot of, love and loss and great things and horrific things through my career. And again, just excited to be here and share open stories with other strong women.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing I mean, I think I was drawn to you on when we connected on Instagram is just like I love putting out the very real stuff of like this is what we're dealing with. Like lately it's been the topic of like, oh my God, we get a lot of hate. Like there's like
Yeah,
the social media keyboard warriors are relentless.
relentless.
It sucks sometimes to like acknowledge that, but also like not acknowledge it at the same time. Um but coming
Yeah.
from Chicago, like I highly respect, I mean, I have a respect for all law enforcement, but I highly respect people who are literally in like, I don't say this negatively, but like those gutter type cities that it's just like, and usually it's major cities, but like you've dealt with this shit, you've seen this shit, you've been at like probably one of the largest agencies, largest populated areas like in the country. Um,
Yeah.
and that's not something I've experienced because the largest agency I was with was like 100 to 150 sworn. I come from the suburbia Karens that were like, "Oh my God, can you chill out for a minute? Like there's more."
Which is also hard work because it's hard
Yeah.
to please people too.
Yeah, so like there's more serious shit than your neighbor dispute at the moment, but that's part of our job description, so we get to do that too.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've seen a lot of things because you relocated, right?
Yes, so I relocated for love, and like you said, the keyboard warriors want to say she quit her job, she couldn't handle working in Chicago. No, no, I fell in love, and he has a son, so there was no choice but to, I guess, shit or get off the pot, and someone had to move, and it couldn't be him. Could obviously can't expect him to take his son away or to leave his son. So I made the decision to move to South Florida area and be with him. And I've been here for a year and a half. A year and a half later, I can still say that I'm blown away every day by how different policing is and the people are, at least where I work, than where I used to work, both good and bad.
Mhm.
So I've gotten both sides of the coin really at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing when you get the perspective of not only working in different areas, but even just different agencies. Because I mean, like my journey was spent with three different agencies, and one technically was probation and parole, so not policing, but still law enforcement. Um, it's just eye-opening, I think, learning the stark differences and how like law enforcement, like policing in general, is like applied differently based on your jurisdiction, your location, like kind of the
So different.
ins and outs and nuances of how you have the same problem, but then it can be handled so wildly differently.
That's definitely it. Like this, we obviously had the same issues, but the way that Florida goes about things is so different than the way Chicago goes about things, and vice versa. And I'll tell my coworkers in Florida, like, oh my God, we would have never done this in Chicago for like this kind of call. And they're like, well, what would you have done? I'm like, not this. Like, this is crazy. Like, it's so different.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and from a high level view too, it's like Illinois and Florida are very different as far as like politics. Not getting into
Yeah.
politics, so we'll just state the facts for what they are. It's very different.
Yeah.
Um, kind of how law enforcement goes with each of those as far as like being in different environments as far as politics and kind of your administration and um, governors, mayors, all those people that are politicians that are in that state and their beliefs too.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I love that perspective because I think I kind of led my husband through this too because when we were at our agency, it was the only place he had ever worked. And I used to
Hmm.
think the bubble. I was like, you're stuck in the bubble. Like you don't know what's out there because this is a bubble. Like this is all you've ever known. So it was kind of funny watching
Yeah.
his eyes open up as he transferred from a city agency to a state agency, and he was like, "Oh my God!" Like, especially like the small town, like country bumpkin type places that he's like, they have a chief and one guy, and this one guy's like part-time. Like, I don't know how they do this. I was like, "Welcome to rural Oklahoma, honey bunny." Like, it's much
It's
different.
wild. It's like so different. It's just crazy. Like, no matter, even like you said, like in the same state, even different departments, everything is so different,
Yeah,
which is cool. But yeah, it's good that you get to see both like different sides.
yeah, for sure. Cool. I love that. I love the kind of just bringing in the different perspectives from all of policing and not just we get so stuck, I think, in one place sometimes. It's good to hear the different how
Yeah.
it can be different.
Yeah.
So the main question of the hour and kind of how I want to run this podcast moving forward is asking all of my guests the same question. So we'll start with this, and this is can be interpreted however you feel. It's meant to
Okay.
be open-ended for a reason. What do you think it means to you to thrive inside of the thin blue line?
So when you first sent this to me, um, I thought about it in my mind, and so many things came to mind. And I was just talking about this to my fiance. He stopped home to like let the dog out. And I said, what does thriving inside of the thin blue line mean to you? And he said, it means, loving your job and being proud of your job, having integrity, getting promoted or getting the promotion that you want or working in the unit that you want. And it's so funny because when I listened to him, he was so confident about talking about that. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm completely thinking of a totally different scenario and a totally different answer, which is why I like that you're asking this. So when you said, what does it mean to thrive inside of the thin blue line? It was just a vision in my mind that I thought of. And it was when I worked the, what would you call it? The protests or the riots downtown Chicago, the summer of 2020. And to me, that was just the first thing that I thought of, that it was the first time I really felt like all of us were on the same page. Me and all my coworkers, me and all the departments across the country, where law enforcement really came together and where I really felt for the first time that I wanted to stand up for like my job and my coworkers and what I love and what I do and my dad. And just kind of like when I stood in a line with all these people I work with that 90% of them I don't know, I felt confident that they had my back and I had theirs. And that's just the first thing. Maybe I need to be more selfish and think of myself like I'm thriving inside the thin blue line. But to me, I just felt like Thriving inside of the thin blue line was when the whole blue line was a line, or like physically a line together, and us all in one, in unison.
Yeah. That's wild. I mean, I love that vision, but that's wild
It's
that
like,
you
it does not even answer your question. I don't know, but that's just what I think of, you
yeah, it
know? I don't
does.
know.
100% it does. Um, and that's why I like to leave this open-ended because you already presented like two different perspectives of like your
Yeah,
fiance, um, and then yourself. How long has your fiance been in law enforcement?
almost 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
Yeah, like I think it'll be this year 10 years.
Okay. So not
Hmm.
much less time than where you're at. Because you said six and a
Yeah,
half, right? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So roughly the same time frame that you guys started. Um, Side note, it's like my husband says, he's like, I should have been a cop in the 90s.
yeah,
For all,
all
for
of
all
us.
for all those reasons of the old school cops reruns, which I love putting in my presentations because they're entertaining and educational.
Yeah, like let's go grab a beer after this shooting. Like, are you kidding? Like, not real. Or maybe it was in the 90s. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That and the solid. I don't
But
know. Side note, squirrel again. Squirrel moment again. Um, okay, cool. I like this. First of all, I saw your recent post about the riots and like your patrol car after
yeah,
it went down. And again, like that's not something like we had riots in the city of Tulsa, but Tulsa's not big enough where like they were very like no bullshit, where it's like if you tried to cause problems, like they shut it down. At least they were successful at
as
shutting
it should
it down
be.
really quickly. Yeah. So none of it like it was kind of like in our agency because we were a suburb of Tulsa, like we weren't far out from there. They're kind of like, well, be ready. Um, but they're like, oh, by the way, here's a shield and a baton and a helmet. Come back to the squad room if you need it, if shit pops off. And I was like, great strategy, guys. This is gonna end
Right.
real well.
That's kind of
Last
how it
minute.
was in Chicago too, which is
Oh my God.
scary.
Last minute. I was like, well, good luck, fellas. And I'm like, oh, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Like, I really hope this doesn't happen. Like, we are getting threats that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can't imagine being there and being in the middle of all that. And I saw a lot of what happened
Yeah.
in Dallas too, since I've got a lot of contacts down there in Dallas. Um, one of the guys that worked for our agency at the time, like, saw a picture of his old patrol unit and was like, RIP to unit, like whatever the number was, because it had been like torched. And I was like, this is unreal. It's unreal.
Yeah, it was a wild time. I remember like working alongside, there was like this older guy I was working with, and he had worked NATO in Chicago, which was similar in the sense that it's like the last big protest riot, like that really took over in maybe like our lifetime in Chicago as far as policing versus like the community. Um, and he looked at me and he's like, this is like NATO's nothing compared to this. We were so prepared for NATO. We're not prepared for this. And you're going to remember this for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh God, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay. So we've had more time to prepare. We have more tools. We have more resources, and we are less prepared than we were. I can't remember when NATO was, to be honest. I wasn't on the job then, but how are we so unprepared? I don't know.
Yeah. Yikes. What a time. It's weird that that was 5 years ago. I think it's kind of like a smack in the face. You're
Oh
like, oh
my
my God, that was
God.
5 years ago.
Holy crap. That feels like yesterday. When you say it like that, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I go downtown, I'll walk past certain um places and I'll be like my heart will be like, I remember like standing here getting like eggs thrown at me or paint or like a brick. I'm like, oh my God, feels like yesterday.
That's wild. That's very cool that you use that analogy of literally like at that time you felt like you created that line again, whether you call it like the thin blue line, but I mean it is a good analogy of like
Yeah.
you're holding your ground um between like good and evil as is kind of is often talked about of like trying to stand there and defend your city and make sure people aren't like looting stuff and burning shit and literally trying to hold a line and stand there and protect. the city that you work for and have some pride.
Yeah. And it's like the first time I really felt like everyone had my back. And I always felt like I had everyone else's back, but I don't know if I ever felt like everyone had my back until that moment. I trusted everyone around me to do the right thing.
Yeah. So it's kind of a vision of solidarity. What
Yes.
what do you feel like, again, it may not have changed, but what do you think has been the major shift since then that's if you feel like I guess do you feel like you still have that solidarity or has it shifted for you?
Um, there are moments where I feel like I have that solidarity. But there is definitely moments that I feel like I don't. I will say that in Florida, where I work now, at least on my own squad, it's much smaller. And I do feel that solidarity with my coworkers and my supervisors. I do feel like I could pick up the phone, call any of them. They'll be there for me no matter what. I do love that feeling. And I feel very grateful for that. But in Chicago at that big agency, I wasn't really feeling that. I felt like everyone was kind of on their own line, own path. There was lots of toxicity and drama, and it was kind of sad because it was like we were just all rooting for each other. And then, like, the minute it ends, we just go back to hating each other and being rude to each other. But of course, there's always moments. But obviously, the pendulum swings towards law enforcement, away from law enforcement. And I do feel like that has a tendency to affect the way that we conduct ourselves as officers or as partners or as, employees. When we feel really supported, we might feel more positive in our job. And when we feel like the whole world hates us, we might not go into work feeling so great or wanting to work. When you love your boss, you want to get them numbers and you want to do the right thing. And when you hate your boss, you're like, why am I doing a million traffic stops for this guy? Like, who cares? And that goes from that level all the way to your governor, your mayor, your president. I mean, whoever it is, it's like when we were in Chicago and our mayor like was very open about not really backing the blue. Did we really care to go out there and be the best we could be for really unappreciated people? No. But now I guess since I'm in Florida and our governor is very supportive of law enforcement, gives us the tools and resources that we need and is um, backs the blue. And I do think there's some sort of feeling to that. So maybe an unspoken feeling, but definitely being on both sides, I could see the difference in people really wanting to work hard and people saying, well, what? And I don't blame them because I was one of them too. Like, why am I working so hard for nothing, for zero appreciation and an already thankless job?
Right. Yeah, 100%. So it sounds like it was much easier and much more motivating for you to, or even just have more of like a love for the job again when you're in an environment that is like they value you, they support you, they respect you.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if it's even me. I just feel like everyone there takes their job very seriously and everyone really cares about the job, cares about the community, cares about doing their job right. And when you're surrounded by people who really care, you tend to really care.
Yeah.
And when I was surrounded by people who could really give a shit about doing much, which again, I was one of them at certain points because we were not supported. You don't really have that drive or determination. So now, I mean, and again, it fluctuated, but now I do feel like at least a little bit more of like everyone's really trying their best here. Like, really, I've said to people in the community I work in now, I'm like, you guys are really lucky. You have really great police officers here. As I'm in my uniform, I'm like, they really care. Like
Yeah.
these officers really care, and you really are protected in this neighborhood, in this community. And as I'm in my farm, but I'm like, you guys got good cops here. Like you're really lucky. So yeah,
Yeah. And of course, that comes from having that different perspective from coming
yeah.
from Chicago as well, too. Yeah, for sure. So that sounds like, I mean, that's a very high level view of being encouraged and supported, I feel like, or at least feeling like maybe it's more of like an impact or a bigger mission that you're able to strive for because those people, like, because like you said, you're surrounded by people who care, who genuinely care and want to make a positive impact.
And on top of that, even at the lowest level, when I walk in to get a coffee somewhere, when I walk in to get food, it's, hi, how are you? Thank you for your service. Stuff like that. I was so uncomfortable the first couple times people said that to me or like offer to buy me a coffee. I'm like, please, no, 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 which I still don't let anyone, but um, it's so weird being thanked and being talked to nicely because I really did not experience that where I worked in Chicago. Now, Chicago is a huge city. There's plenty of officers and plenty of people that love the police. And I maybe a few times in my career, maybe as much as I can count on these hands in 5 years, maybe once a year, now in Florida, the community really likes you too. So I think that's also a huge, at least where I work in Florida, that's also a huge impact because you know that the community, you know, if you do a good job, someone might even write a letter to your boss saying, you know, she did a great job. Where I used to work, no way. You could have done everything in the world, saved 10 lives in this, you know, and no one's going to write, at least where I worked. I felt no one's going to write you a letter. I've already gotten, you know, thank yous and stuff like that here in a year and a half. So it's also the community. When you feel supported, you want to do your job better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's
It's
definitely,
freaky.
yeah.
It's so weird when people are like, thank you so much. I'm like, you're being too nice. I feel uncomfortable. Please stop.
I'm appreciated here. What is this life? What is this world that I've
I'm like,
been
please stop
transported
being
to?
nice to me. This is weird. I'm not used to people liking me. It's very
Yeah.
strange.
Okay. I like that. So on that note, it sounds like, I mean, you have two comparison points of
Yeah.
one that was very challenging because it was a very politically charged environment. I would assume
Yes.
inside and outside of the department as
Very
well.
much so.
Um, and then moving to something that's much more positive, it sounds like all around. So if there's somebody in a job or in law enforcement right now that kind of is recognizing more of like the negative red flags or they're feeling stuck and kind of being pulled down, what do you feel like are like the positive type traits to look for if they're thinking about maybe moving to a different agency or finding a better environment for themselves?
I think anytime that someone even is telling me, like, hey, I want to become an officer or I want to be in law enforcement, I say, you have to be okay with change. Like, that's the number one thing. You have to be okay with change. I worked a corporate job for a few years before I became a police officer, and it was very mundane. It was the 9 to 5. I knew what I had to do each day. I knew, you know, my schedule and all of that. When you go into policing, you have no idea what to expect every single day. You, especially in Chicago, I got a letter, you know, hey, you're going to be detailed out to this thing for the next 90 days starting tomorrow here and there, or you might be changed watches. Hey, tomorrow you're going to midnights. Like you cannot um expect for anything to be the same every day. And that's with inside and outside. And so, with that being said, if you are feeling some type of way where you're working, change is awesome. And you're in a job that ever changes. So, you might as well try a different unit. Like, don't stay where you're at because it's easy or because you're comfy, even if you're not liking it. Oh, well, you know, this gig is so easy, even though I kind of hate it, but I know, you know, like it's easy. I know I'm good at where I'm at. So what? You have 25 years of this. Like, try something else, put in for a different unit. interview for something else. Maybe if you're in a big, agency like Chicago PD, go to a different district. You don't have to go to the suburbs. Like, I have a friend who worked with me where I worked. She worked there for probably 6 years. And again, a very, very high volume, very high crime area. She was able to put in for a different district. Um, and she literally looks lighter. She's so much happier. In the area she works in now, it's like a Florida. Like, it's people are saying thank you. She's like, what the hell? It's a more appreciative community. So she says, of course, I've never worked there, but and honestly, just getting out of the toxic environment she was feeling where she worked, because again, it's not where you work, it's the people you work with as well. So it's not just the community. Is she wasn't feeling happy inside the four walls of the station either. So when she left, she was so happy, and it was scary for her to leave because she knew she had it easy here. She's been there for 6 years. She's well known. She needs a day off. She gets it, whatever. So taking that leap is hard no matter what, but she's never been happier. So embrace change and just take it and run. And if you want to go to a new agency, I will tell you that yes, like in my situation, so far it's been pretty good. But trust me, I've had my shit. Every agency is like a high school. You just because you're going to new grass doesn't mean it's always greener. So you're not going to just up and leave somewhere and expect it to be great. You got to, like you said in the beginning, you got to lift yourself up first. You got to love yourself, love what you do, find your passion, find your purpose, and no one else can determine the rest. So maybe it's just a little change, and maybe it's from going from midnights to day shift, seeing the sunlight a little bit, So don't necessarily have to leave your whole department to find happiness because it might not always be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think it's more of a message of if you're stuck, don't be afraid to make a change. In fact, you probably
Yeah,
should make a change if you're feeling miserable.
absolutely.
Um,
25 years. You got a long time. Make a change. YOLO. You got a long time.
yeah. I think that's a good point too, because I think especially in law enforcement, we tend to like the blinders kind of come on from like what our opportunities are, and we get like when you're inside of it you feel so stuck, and then when you come out of it you're like, oh my God, like I can't believe I felt this way or saw it in that way. So I mean I think it's more of like don't let the fear of the unknown deter you from
100%.
going after the thing.
Yeah, 100%. Because how can we have fear of unknown when we're police officers? We go out to every call. It's a barking dog call, and it could end up being a shooting. So you can't be afraid of the unknown when every day is unknown. So just take it and run with it. Like, it could be the best thing that ever happened to you. It might suck. Guess what? Try something else. Oh, well, you got 25 years of it.
Yes, I like it. Not the fear of the unknown, the best thing that could ever happen to you.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I
Yeah.
like that. That's
Fuck
probably
yeah.
what we're gonna title this thing. I like it. Awesome.
Love
All
it.
right. So, okay. So going back to looking for in a positive environment, um,
Yeah.
it sounds like really just kind of taking control as far as what your environment is and realizing that it's not always those external circumstances that control where you're at.
Yeah. I mean, I let a lot of things determine my mood and my outlook, how other people felt, how my bosses felt, like, and that's how I felt. You kind of become a chameleon, and you become really close with the people you work with, whether you like them or not. You're working with them 40 hours a week, maybe 12-hour long shifts. There's a unspoken bond, whether you don't like each other or not, because you may have to save each other's life, and you know that. But again, I've been truly working on not letting other people's moods, vibes, opinions, and all that, feelings, determine how I feel. And I've come a long way because I definitely wasn't that way in the beginning. I definitely let outside and inside factors determine how I worked, my mood, who I kind of was. We say a lot, and we've kind of talked about it, Monica, but like being part of the boys' club and wanting to, look, talk, be, act a certain way as a woman to feel respected or valued on this job. And it's taken, and trust me, in the beginning, my first couple months, I didn't even wear makeup to work. I didn't even put on a mascara because I just wanted to look like as I don't even know what I thought a police officer should look like. And now I do whatever the hell I want because that makes me feel good. And if I feel good, I'm obviously acting better because I'm liking myself more and I'm being myself. So I mean, I'm 6.5 years in. I finally feel like I'm who I really am as an officer and as myself. Does not start off that way though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know from my personal experiences, when you get into the academy or kind of the police setting, it's still that militarized type world where you're trying to follow the rules, you're trying to make a good impression.
Yep.
Um, Unfortunately for us, and I don't really agree with this, and I don't really care if anybody else agrees with me or not, but it's more of like don't speak unless spoken to type stuff, which was a part of my experience and hopefully not everybody's experience. Um, and that's tough to find yourself when you're kind of being that's kind of again part of the paramilitary type structure and organization when there's chain of command and all of that things at play. You're trying to figure out where do I fit in this world to where I can be myself but still follow the rules. And it's
Yeah.
fault and also not ruffle feathers at the same time because you're like, well, I am a person and I disagree with this, but when does it make sense to kind of fight that battle versus not?
Yeah, exactly. And now I feel so comfortable. Like if I get called into the office or something, I'm like, okay, you know, whereas like before my heart would sink to the freaking ground. Now I'm so much more confident in like who I am and what I do, my heart and everything that it's like nothing can make me really feel bad at this point. Nothing can make me not want to stand up for myself or to speak what's right when before maybe I kind of hid in the shadows or did what I thought was the right thing. Or, like you said, I didn't speak unless I was spoken to. Now I will speak first. And I don't care if that isn't okay because it's not in my contract that I have to sit there and be silent. So, of course, always move with respect. I'm not saying be disrespectful by any means, but if something's wrong or if you feel like, someone's coming after you, whoever it may be, like it's okay to stand up for yourself. I've done it a million times now. I didn't in the beginning, but
Yeah.
I feel much better that I do now.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean that's kind of my message too because my biggest regret in law enforcement was trying to I lost myself in pleasing others and trying to please others. Um, and I mean, that's kind of what you've walked through a little bit, or at least if you didn't completely lose yourself, you're kind of like you realized where you could step into your authentic self. So what do you think helped you to make that transition from kind of like you said, like being in the shadows to just standing up and being like, this is me, what you see is what you get. I'm gonna be respectful, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna do my job. But at the same time, you hired me for me, so here I am.
Yeah. Honestly, it was mostly like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, who came for me, who hated me, what trouble or whatever bullshit that transpired, the people that worked with me and the people that loved me, my friends, family, whatever, and coworkers were always there at the end. So it's like, okay, all this is falling down, falling down. This is getting horrible. But my boss, my direct boss is like, you're amazing. Fuck them. My coworkers are like, we love working with you. Like, you're the shit. Who cares? So it's like, I guess in some sense, there's that validation. But then at the same time, it's like you get beaten down, you get beaten down, you get beaten down, you get beaten down. And if you ask anyone that knows me, they know my story is probably one of the most horrific, sickest. Like I've been through the most sick, disgusting things by even own coworkers. And somehow, some way, there was days where I'd sit there and cry or like feel like crap. Somehow, some way, I had to truly like look inside of myself and say, like, okay, am I bad at my job? No. Am I a nice person? Yes. Am I meant to be here? Yes. Do my coworkers trust me? Yes. Is my officer safety good? Yes. Do I know what I'm doing? Yes. So fuck all that. And I think you've said it before too. It's like no one can tell you anything if you know your heart or what you're doing. I didn't do anything wrong. I've never fucked up like a call and like in a bad way. I've never used use of force in a bad way. I've never like all of that. Like I've always been respectful. Everyone I arrest, they say thank you. Thank you so much, officer. Can other officers say that? No, I treat everyone with respect. So it's like as you, and it's all obviously as you work more and more years in law enforcement, you get better at it. But honestly, kind of hitting rock bottom. It's like, am I going to quit the job or am I going to stay? I could have easily quit law enforcement a million times just for my mental health. I mean, 100%. But, I kind of had to look into myself and say, like, these people, the ones that are saying horrible things or doing horrible things, like, they don't even know me, never worked with me. So, oh well. Couldn't pick you out in a crowd. So, I don't know. But of course, it got to me in the beginning. Still does. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of things that get to me, but I just keep trucking along and kind of like being like, this is me. I'm not going to change it for anybody.
Yeah, that's
I
amazing.
don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. Um, and that's why I'm sitting here taking notes so I hit the things that
I'm like,
I love
where
that you're saying. Um,
did I
yeah.
go from there?
No,
Oh,
you're good. That's when you know you hit your stride. It's just the things just keep coming. They keep coming. Um, it sounds like more of like that positive self-talk of like
yes.
I am I am all these things. I can confidently say I am doing well at my job. I am here for a purpose. I still feel fulfilled in what I do. I still feel a calling to be here. It's not at the point where I'm severely questioning my career choices or my life choices or like my health is in the gutter. Like I might be at rock bottom, but like I still want to be here at the end of the day. And because of all of these reasons, I still want to be here at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you know what else I will say is that what also helped me too, and I think most people need to do this as well, is that you have to have outside like stuff going on. Because God forbid I want to quit tomorrow. I have a million other things going on, other streams of income, other friends outside of law enforcement, other hobbies, other things to do. So that if you ever feel like you need to leave, or if you ever feel like you're going to get fired or whatever it may be, you got something else going on because that's when it feels, I think, the worst is when you feel like this is your whole life. And a lot of people will look at me and be like, it is your whole life. Like but it's not. It's really not. My relationship, my stepson, my family. I do stuff in like the beauty space, obviously my podcast, and I design clothing. Like I do so much that my work has now become my work. And that's really nice to say because I can just go to work, get my check, do my job, and go home to my family. And it's not everything in the world to me.
Yes, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. And that's one of the things that I preach on as well is we get into the job and it becomes the only thing that we focus on. It's like the eat, sleep, work, repeat cycle. And I feel for those officers at those agencies that don't pay well because that's part of it too. Because you're like, I
Yeah.
have to have this job. I have to work the overtime. I have to work the part times. because I have bills to pay and I have a family to support. And I totally understand where people get stuck in that cycle because it's like, well, this is all I've ever done. If I leave, what other options do I have? And I've seen a lot of that too from the like the retirement community perspective even. It's like they get done and it's like this is the only thing I've ever done for the last 30 years of my life.
They're
And
so lost.
all of a sudden it ends and you're like, what's next? Because a lot of these people too, like you're still relatively young. Like most retirees are in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, depending on when you started in the career field. It's like my husband started at 21. He's had to switch pensions and retirement and that whole mumbo jumbo since he changed jobs. But I mean, in theory, he could have been done at 41. And
Right, which
I
is
mean,
crazy.
you could have a whole other career. Like you could work between 41 and
Whole other life.
61. And
And if you look at like the suicide rate, the highest amount of suicides are actually retired officers. Because, like you said, once they retire, they don't know what to do. They feel lost and feel like they have nothing to live for anymore. That's why you gotta have family, you gotta have other things around.
yes. And now that you mentioned that in my own story, I think I had other things outside of work
Yes,
for
you
me,
absolutely did.
but it got to the point where even that wasn't enough to pull me out of like the dark space that I was in because it was kind of almost taking away from those positive things at that point too.
Mm,
But I love that you
yeah.
have that listed because it's like, hey, we forget we had these hobbies that we had before we started, or we forget we had these friends that we had before we started because now they're not cops and they don't get what I do, and I can't go vent to them about work. And so we just kind of stop talking because we can't
Yeah.
find equal things to talk about, like all of those things. So I think that's such a huge point of like, again, and another thing I preach about is like finding balance in your life, like taking back that control away from your 40-hour a week job, 40 to 60 for some, obviously.
Yeah.
And being like, hey, like I work to live, not live to work. And there's these so many other things about my life that I love and enjoy. At what point did I throw those away or get rid of those? Or am I still able to pour into those things and make it like an important part of my life where that it's not just being tied to work?
Yeah. And I'm still, of course, working on that. There's so many things that I lost when I started this job. Like I was a dancer my whole life, and like you were a gymnast. And like even when I watch old dance videos, I like tear up. I'm like, that was my everything. And I just stopped. So like one of my resolutions this year is to like take a dance class once a month. Like, because that gives me happiness and joy. And that was definitely something I left because it doesn't make any money. It's not like whatever. It's just your own personal passion, like your own personal hobby. And so I kind of left it in the wayside. And that's definitely something I want to do. And then this year, I also like, I'll either go to school, like to do something else. But this year, I want to learn sign language. So I'm like, I'm going to start sign language classes. Like, I want to, like, obviously have my mind in other places besides just at work.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I didn't know you
Hopefully,
were.
sign language isn't too hard, but I really want to learn it. I've been wanting, that was my goal last year and I didn't do it. So I got to do it this year. Got to.
I feel like that's so important to have at least some background in like a different language, especially you guys are in Southern Florida. It's a lot of Hispanic, Latin, like
Girl,
Cuban
I can't speak a
influence.
lick of anything but barely English. So I'm like, let's do sign language. I could try to do that and have to speak. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really want to, I really want to get at least some of it. Because I did have once in Chicago, I had a girl shot and her boyfriend shot and killed. And she was deaf and she only signed. And no one in the entire hospital, none of our officers could speak to her. So the hospital had like this iPad that they like wheeled over to her and they had like some sort of like telehealth guy signing to her, telling her what's going on. But in that moment, I was like, oh, I wish I knew sign language because she was shot and we couldn't tell her that because she kept saying, kept not signing like what happened to my boyfriend.
Oh my
No
God.
one could tell her, you know? So ever since then, I've been wanting to do it. That was a couple of years ago, so I need to get on it.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. You never think about those situations until they land in your lap, and then you're like, oh shit, this is very
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
This,
And you can't communicate. It's not good.
Oh, oh, I love that. I love that you have the goal. It's like having those small personal goals too. Like I think we lose
Yeah.
the small personal goals side of it. It's always very career driven of like I have my whole career plan mapped out of when I'm going to promote, when I'm going to apply to all these units and X, Y, and Z and all the training courses I'm going to do to line that up, and then you forget about like the personal side of things. I like to think
Yeah. And
back.
to be honest, in Chicago, I had that, like what you just said, like when I want to get promoted, the next test I'm going to take, the next unit. And ever since I got to Florida, it's been a year and a half. I've actually just been really happy on patrol. Like I'm just letting myself breathe, get accustomed to a new state, a new uh, police department. I'm still in the process, of making friends and learning where I live. And I'm not applying pressure on myself as far as like the job goes for the first time. And I just took taken the detective's exam right when I in Chicago, right when I left. And that I had been studying for, been wanting, and then all these things. And I was like, oh, I'm just about to give this up, you know. But I work on Midnight's Road Patrol right now, and I really like it. So it's like wild. I thought I was gonna hate Midnights, going back to Midnights. Oh my God. But I'm at peace right now, and I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit.
At peace.
I feel at peace being on Midnights on Road Patrol, which is really crazy. But I do, at least right now. I have so much other things going on. It's a good schedule for my family. And again, like I still use GPS to get around here. Like I'm still not like, I'm just taking my time. I'm taking my time.
Yes. Absolutely. Man, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear that you feel at peace with work and kind of just life in general. And
Do for
yeah,
once in a long time. And it's not to say road patrol is like the lowest on the totem pole by any means. It's the hardest, I think. And there's some road patrol officers that they want to do road patrol for their 25 years. And I always kind of looked at them like, oh, that's crazy. But now that I'm like loving it so much, I'm like, oh, I could see that. I mean, I don't think I'll do that, but I could see as far as if you do have a lot going on in your outside life to work the road because it's exciting and all that. But then you get to go home to your family and you get to keep that schedule. And, you know, I could see a bunch of different ways now, whereas like I was always striving for the next thing, next thing, next thing, putting in for this, putting in for that, studying for this. For the first time, I'm like breathing. It's really nice.
I love that. I think that's a great way to wrap this up is
Yeah,
driving inside the thin blue line, maybe in someone's world, at least in your world, definitely means just being at peace.
being
Um,
at peace.
yeah,
Yeah,
doing whatever it takes to be at peace with work, with life, with everything going on. Um, and it sounds like, I mean, that essentially started from finding that solidarity at work, but also recognizing that like your environment matters. Whether it's
yeah,
internal, external, like your environment matters. Having those supportive people around you and keeping your circle around you to keep that positive, like kind of in that positive bubble of like these people are saying all this stuff, whatever, like don't worry about it, like focus back here, like we got you. We have this supportive
yeah,
circle to help you through that. Keeping your own positive self-talk in addition to that too, because like we can be our worst enemies and our worst critics, like in our own minds. So keeping
100%.
that positive self-talk and then having the hobbies and the things that you do outside of work so that you have that balance. So that
Yeah,
you have the things that it's not just like work is my only focus. I have this other life outside and all of it together with the balance that you work towards. Like it's fulfilling to me and it's finally brought me back to a place of peace.
yeah. And it's like, be at peace, you know? Like, just if you're happy where you're at, breathe. If you're not, change. Like, nothing wrong with a little change.
Yeah.
Got 25 years to change.
Yeah. You can stay stuck and stay miserable, or you can step out and go for it. And then at
Yeah.
that point you find peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And you might find peace in the places you weren't expecting to find peace.
Yeah. Yes. Love it. I love it. That's so cool. That's so, so cool. All right. Well, just to wrap this up real quickly, I'd love for you to share with everybody more of the personal side of what you do, as far as your businesses and what you got going on,
So,
and how, if anybody would love to contact you or connect with you, how they can get a hold of you.
yeah, I have my page that's kind of like a police, first responder advocacy page, like news and open forum. That's never period forgotten period co. There's also apparel on that page, and I also do fundraising as requested by families for injured officers, fallen officers. I've even done like things unrelated to law enforcement. I can make custom shirts and designs. And then my own personal page is at Hey 27. It's HEYYHAYY 27, where I share like my life, whether that's my bachelorette party this weekend or law enforcement stuff, or I work in the beauty space as well. And then my TikTok is at that officer. Hey, I've been a little bit distant from TikTok recently just for my mental health. I'm loving Instagram, so I'll message me on there. I probably won't get back to your message on TikTok, but I will on Instagram. So feel free to message me. I love making new friends.
Yeah, and then a quick note, I'd love for you to tell everybody about your podcast as well, since I was
Oh,
fortunate
my
to be
podcast.
a guest on the podcast, and I know you put out great things on there as well.
Oh my God, how hilarious. I forgot. So I have a podcast. It's called the 5O Podcast with three O's. And it's kind of like an interview forum, advice forum, where like when Monica was on, I asked her about her journey in law enforcement, how it was adjusting to outside life, and then what she's doing now, and kind of sharing that and hoping that I make connections for people. That's like my main thing is like, I hope someone listening to Monica's podcast felt some sort of connection to her, some sort of tie, and goes to her page, reaches out to her. And then obviously this whole thin blue line connects to each other. And that's what I want it to be, a positive way to connect to other officers and people in first responding fields, and to be able to share their stories on a comfortable, safe platform. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.
Yeah, I'll get all that and link all that down there so everybody can find
Thank
you where it makes sense too. Um, Thanks so much for coming on. This has been awesome because I think you've exemplified all three things I was hoping to hit. We rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. And I don't think we're ever really in competition with each other. We can all thrive and help each other, in one way, shape, or form. You're one decision away from a totally different life. That's like making that change, like stepping out of your comfort zone and going for the thing, versus
100%.
staying stuck or maybe somewhere where it's more comfortable, to stay, and then finding your own peace, which for you is what I think you found to thrive inside the thin blue line, and finding that balance between work and life.
Yeah. Yeah, this was like a therapy session. I appreciate it. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but I feel really at peace right now. I got a
Yeah.
nap before I go to work tonight because, again, I work midnights. So right now I'm going to go to sleep, and I feel like I'm going to sleep really peacefully after this.
Like, oh my
So
gosh, I've
good.
been crushing it for so long. Like I just needed the like the perspective shift in the conversation to be like, fuck yeah, I'm doing awesome in my life right now.
Like, I'm at peace right now, and I just said it out loud. Like, I am at peace. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so many great things.
Send me my bill later.
No, never.
$75 an hour.
It's for all of us. We're all here just trying to do the best we can in life most days. So
Exactly.
it's for all of us.
Exactly. I felt good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hang on for a second after we hit end. I'll chat with you for a second. But everyone who has listened to this wonderful ride for both of us, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you love it, please share it. Please comment, if this was helpful and enjoyable for you, or shoot me an email if you'd like to keep it private and one-on-one. That's totally cool too. But I'd love to hear some feedback. So if y'all got it for us, we would love to hear it. And that goes for both of us. I think we're both wanting to help anyone we can as far as being a mentor in the space, as much as possible. So you can reach out to either of us at any time, and we'll give you the best we have for whatever that's worth. All right. Thank you so much, Haley. I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you.